I almost didn't make this. I want you to know that. I want that to be the first thing you hear from me today because I think it matters. I think the almost matters as much as the doing sometimes, maybe more. Because the almost is where the real decision lies. The almost is where you sit with yourself in the quiet and ask the hardest question a person can ask. Is this worth saying? Is this worth opening? Is this worth the particular kind of vulnerability that comes with standing in front of people you care about and handing them something that's still bleeding a little at the edges? I sat with that question for a long time, and then I decided, yes, it's worth it. You're worth it. And maybe more importantly, the truth is worth it because I've been learning slowly, imperfectly, over the course of this strange and beautiful and sometimes devastating life that the things we almost don't say are usually the things that most need to be said. The things we hold back out of pride or fear or the very reasonable concern that once something is out in the world, you can never pull it back. Those are usually the things that are keeping us from something, keeping us small, keeping us behind glass, keeping us from the people and the moments and the connections that life is actually made of underneath all the noise and the performance and the careful management of how we appear. So here I am, still here. And I need to tell you what that means. You know, there's a particular kind of stillness that comes after a storm, not the dramatic, cinematic kind of storm where everything is destroyed and you stand in the rubble and rebuild from scratch. I've had those. I know what those feel like and what they cost and what they leave behind. I'm talking about the other kind, the quieter kind, the kind of storm that happens entirely inside you where the outside world keeps moving at its normal pace. People going to work and making coffee and laughing at things on their phones. And you are in the middle of all of it carrying something so large and so heavy and so completely invisible to everyone around you that some days you genuinely marvel at your own ability to hold it without anyone noticing. That's been my life for the past while, carrying something invisible. And I'm done carrying it invisibly.
Yeah.
I want to put it down right here, right now, in front of you. Not because I need you to carry it for me. That's not what this is. I'm not here looking for sympathy or rescue or the particular kind of comfort that comes from having an audience witness your pain and reflect it back to you softened and validated. That's not what I need from you. What I need from you is simply this: to be here, to be present, to sit with me in this for a little while and let it be what it is without trying to fix it or frame it or give it a neater shape than it has. Can you do that? I think you can. I think that's actually one of the things you're extraordinary at. The people who find their way here, who come back, who show up for these conversations, you have a quality that I find genuinely remarkable. You know how to be present. You know how to listen. And in a world that has largely forgotten how to do either of those things, that makes you something special. I mean that. So here's what's true. I'm still here. I know that sounds simple, maybe even obvious, but I need you to understand what it took to still be here, what it cost, what it required of me on the days when being here felt like the hardest possible thing I could be asked to do. Because there have been those days. More than I expected, honestly. More than I would have predicted if you'd asked me a year ago, 2 years ago, sitting in a different version of this life, with a different understanding of what I was capable of withstanding. I've talked before. If you've been here for a while, you know this about loss, about the way grief works, about the particular architecture of a life that has been shaped by losing people and things and versions of yourself that you thought you'd have forever. And then I thought I understood grief. I thought I had developed through years of experience and reflection and the hard-won wisdom that comes from surviving things you didn't think you'd survive, a kind of fluency with it, a way of moving through it that was neither denial nor drowning, a middle path that I had walked enough times to know its terrain. And then something happened that taught me I didn't know as much as I thought I did. Not because the grief was bigger than before. Not exactly. But because this time it was mixed with something else. Something I hadn't expected to be dealing with again. Something I had, with great care and intention, moved away from the center of my life. Something I had told myself quietly in the private conversations we have with ourselves when we're making decisions about who we're going to be. I had told myself was behind me. Hope. I know. You'd think hope would be the easy part. You'd think hope would be the relief in the mixture. The thing that lightens the weight of grief, the counterbalance that makes loss bearable. And sometimes it is. Sometimes hope is exactly that. A lifeline. A small, persistent light in a dark room that keeps you moving toward it even when your legs are tired and the dark feels endless. But sometimes hope is the hardest part. Sometimes hope is the thing that keeps you awake at 3 a.m, not with despair, but with the particular ache of wanting something you can see clearly and reach for and almost touch but cannot yet hold. Sometimes hope is the thing that makes the distance feel longest, because if you had no hope, the distance would just be distance. A fact, a wall, something you'd learn to accept and build a life around. But when you have hope, the distance becomes something else entirely. It becomes a space that is full of everything that isn't there yet, full of possibility, full of the weight of wanting, full of all the conversations not yet had and all the mornings not yet woken up to and all the ordinary, extraordinary moments of a shared life that exist in the future you're hoping for, but haven't arrived in yet. Hope is heavy. I want someone to say that more often. I want someone to acknowledge that hoping, real hoping, the kind that survives disappointment and keeps itself alive through uncertainty and doesn't give up even when giving up would be so much easier and so much more restful. That kind of hope is one of the most exhausting things a human being can do. And I've been doing it every day with everything I have, because there is someone. I've alluded to this before. Some of you know. Some of you have been reading between the lines of the things I say, the way I say them, the places where my composure gets a little thinner and something more real shows through. You've been watching, and you've been kind about what you've seen, and I love you for that. I genuinely love you for that. There is someone who has become, without my permission and without any clear moment of decision, the person I measure everything against. The person I think of when something is beautiful because I want to tell them about it. The person I think of when something is hard because I want to know how they'd see it. The person who has managed to do something that I did not think was possible for anyone to do at this point in my life, which is to make me feel, in the truest and most grounded sense of the word, at home. Not in a place, not in a house or a city or a country, in a conversation, in a presence, in the particular way they look at things and the particular way they say things and the particular way they make even the most ordinary moments feel like they're worth paying attention to. Like they matter. Like you matter. Like the space you occupy in the world is not just space, but something specific and valued and irreplaceable. Do you know how rare that is? I do. I know exactly how rare that is. I've lived long enough and lost enough and rebuilt enough to have a very precise understanding of how rarely you encounter someone who makes you feel that way. Who makes you feel not just loved in the general sense, the way people who are kind and decent and well-intentioned love each other, but seen, actually specifically down to the particular details of who you are seeing. That's what this person does, and the shocking, humbling, occasionally terrifying reality of my life right now is that I love them fully, without the protective reservations I used to layer over everything I felt, without the careful hedging and the emotional insurance policies I used to take out against the possibility of loss. Without the wall, I love them with the wall down, which means I love them with full knowledge of what's at stake, full awareness of my own vulnerability, full acceptance of the fact that this could hurt me in ways I won't be able to fully manage or control. And I love them anyway. I love them still. I am still here. But here's the thing about still being here that I want to talk to you about today, because this isn't just a love story. It's a story about waiting. And waiting, I've discovered, is its own kind of practice, its own kind of discipline, its own kind of courage that nobody talks about, because we live in a world that has decided that waiting is passive, that waiting is weakness, that if you really want something, you go and get it, and anything less than that is a failure of will or nerve or ambition. I reject that completely. I want to stand here in front of you and say, with everything I have, that waiting, when it is chosen and conscious and rooted in love and respect rather than paralysis and fear, is one of the bravest things a person can do. Because waiting means continuing to hold something open inside yourself when every self-protective instinct you have is telling you to close it. Waiting means showing up every day for a love that doesn't yet have the shape you hoped it would have, and choosing to believe that shape is still possible. Waiting means being still in a world that rewards motion, being faithful in a world that rewards novelty, being patient in a world that has largely lost its tolerance for anything that doesn't resolve quickly and cleanly and on schedule. I am waiting, not passively, not with my life on hold, not with myself put away somewhere, not with my happiness deferred to some future date when circumstances shift and things become simpler and love gets to be straightforward. No, I am living fully, as completely and presently as I know how. I am working and creating and connecting and moving through the world with as much openness and engagement as I can bring to each day. I am not waiting the way to wait in a line, doing nothing, counting the minutes, begrudging the time. I am waiting the way you wait for a season to change, fully aware that it will. Fully alive in the season you're in. Fully present to what this time is asking of you, what it's teaching you, what it's making of you. Because this time is making something of me. I can feel it. I am different than I was before this, different in ways I didn't ask for and wouldn't have chosen and am only beginning to understand. The experience of loving someone fully without the wall and then having to hold that love with open hands because the circumstances of both your lives require kind of patience and space and grace that isn't easy and isn't comfortable and doesn't resolve on your preferred timeline. That experience has done something to me, something I think is ultimately good, something I think I needed. It has made me humble, not the performed humility that some people adopt as a kind of personality trait, a way of seeming approachable and grounded while actually being entirely convinced of their own correctness. Real humility, the kind that comes from being reminded by life, by love, by the sheer uncontrollable nature of both, that you are not as in charge as you thought you were, that the things that matter most are precisely the things you cannot engineer or control or achieve through the application of sufficient effort, that love is not a project, that it cannot be managed into the shape you want it to be, that it has its own nature, its own wisdom, its own timeline, and your job is not to direct it, but to honor it, to show up for it every day. Even when showing up means sitting in uncertainty, even when showing up means holding hope without any guarantee that hope is warranted, even when showing up means waking up and choosing again, for the 100th time, the 1,000th time, to keep the door open even though part of you is very tired and would really appreciate a clear answer one way or another. You keep the door open. Because the alternative, closing it, going back behind the wall, deciding that the risk isn't worth it, and that safety is better than love, you don't just lose the possibility of this particular love when you do that. You lose something in yourself, something essential. Some quality of aliveness and openness and willingness to be surprised that, once you close it down, is very hard to get back. I know. I've been there. I spent years behind that wall. I'm not going back. And I want to talk to you about something else too. Something that feels important to name. Something I've been thinking about a lot in these quieter periods, in the early mornings and the late evenings when it's just me and my thoughts, and the particular quality of stillness that comes when the noise of the day has finally died down. I've been thinking about what it means to be worthy of love. Not in the self-critical way. Not in the way where you're cataloging your failures and your flaws and all the ways you've fallen short of what you wish you were. I've done that work. I know my flaws. I've made peace with most of them. The ones I haven't made peace with, I'm working on. No, I'm talking about something different. I'm talking about the active, present, tense practice of becoming someone worthy of the love you're hoping for. Not through grand gestures or dramatic transformations, but through the daily, quiet, unglamorous work of being a better version of yourself. Showing up more honestly, reacting more thoughtfully, giving more generously, holding less tightly, letting go of the grievances and the old stories and the calcified versions of yourself that were useful once but have become prisons. That work is ongoing. I want to be clear about that. I'm not standing here telling you I've arrived somewhere. I'm not presenting you with the finished version of Keanu Reeves, complete and resolved and ready to receive love, because he's done all the necessary preparation. That person doesn't exist. The finished version doesn't exist. We are always in process, always becoming. And the moment you decide you've arrived is usually the moment you stop growing, which is the moment life starts gently and then less gently reminding you that you haven't. What I'm telling you is that I'm in process, consciously, willingly, with as much honesty as I can bring to the practice. I'm in process. And I'm doing it in part for this person. Not in a way that's unhealthy. Not in a way where my growth is contingent on their approval or my becoming is dependent on their presence. That's not love. That's attachment. And I've learned the difference. Real growth happens for yourself, from yourself, out of your own desire to be more fully who you're capable of being. But love can be a catalyst for that growth. Love can show you clearly, with a kind of unflinching honesty that very little else can, exactly where you're still small, exactly where you're still hiding, exactly where you've still got work to do. This love has shown me all of that, and I'm grateful. God, I'm so grateful. Even in the hard days, even in the 3 a.m. days when the hope is heavy and the distance feels long and you're not sure you're doing this right. Even then, I'm grateful for the showing, grateful for the mirror, grateful for the chance to look at myself clearly and decide, again, to keep going. I want to tell you something about time. Because time is at the center of this. Time is the thing I'm most in conversation with right now, more than any person, more than any circumstance, more than any question of logistics or geography or the practical realities of two lives that are both full and complicated and not easily rearranged. Time is the real partner in this. Time is what I'm negotiating with every day, and I've had to completely change my relationship with time. We all grew up in a culture that treats time as a resource to be optimized, as something to be managed and maximized and not wasted. We're obsessed with efficiency, with getting things done quickly, with progress that can be measured and demonstrated and posted about. And I understand that. I've lived inside that framework for most of my adult life. I understand the satisfaction of accomplishment, the forward momentum of a life that's moving and producing and achieving. But love doesn't operate on that framework. Love operates on its own time. And when you are in a situation where love is real but circumstances require patience, where the connection is genuine but the context is complicated, where everything in you wants to move forward but wisdom and respect and care for the other person require you to be still, you have to develop a completely different relationship with time. You have to learn to trust it. You have to learn to stop treating time as an enemy, a force that's working against you, stealing days and weeks and months that you could be spending differently. You have to learn to see time as what it actually is, the medium through which things become possible, the space in which people grow, the container that holds all the becoming that needs to happen before a thing can be what it's meant to be. Time is not taking anything from me. Time is making something possible. I have to believe that, not because someone told me to, not because it's the comforting thing to believe, but because I've lived long enough to see it be true. I've watched time do things that I thought were impossible. I've watched time heal wounds I thought were permanent. I've watched time bring back to life things I had given up for lost. I've watched time, given enough of it and enough faith and enough willingness to stay present without forcing, accomplish things that all the effort and will and clever strategy in the world couldn't touch. Time is on my side. I have to believe that. And I'm still here. Do you understand what I'm trying to tell you? I'm still here means I haven't given up. I'm still here means the wall is still down. I'm still here means that despite the uncertainty and the distance and the complicated reality of two people who love each other trying to find their way to each other through all the noise and the logistics and the timing and the thousand small and large obstacles that life places between the thing you want and the having of it. Despite all of that, I am still in this. I am still choosing this every morning with full awareness, with full knowledge of the cost and the uncertainty and the possibility that the story doesn't end the way I hope it ends. Every morning I wake up and I make the choice again to love, to wait, to stay open, to not let fear win, to not let the weight of the hoping convince me that the hope isn't worth it. It's worth it. They are worth it. And now I want to say something to you directly, person to person, across whatever distance exists between where I'm sitting and where you're watching this from. I want to talk to you about your love. You're waiting. You're still being here because I know some of you are in it too. I know some of you are loving someone right now from a complicated distance, geographic or emotional or circumstantial. I know some of you are holding something open that takes real courage to keep open. Some of you are waiting not passively, but actively, faithfully, exhaustingly for something or someone that you believe in, even when the believing is hard. Some of you have been told by well-meaning people in your life that you should move on, let go, stop waiting, protect yourself. And you've nodded and said you would. And then you've gone home and felt the love still there, unchanged, undimmed, and wondered if there's something wrong with you for not being able to switch it off. There's nothing wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with loving someone faithfully over time and distance and difficulty. There is nothing wrong with believing in something that hasn't resolved yet. There is nothing wrong with being the kind of person who, once you love with your whole self. And the idea of just deciding to stop as if love were a program you could close with the right command feels not just impossible, but somehow dishonest. Somehow like a betrayal of yourself as much as of the other person. Some people love like that. I love like that. And I think it's worth honoring. Not as self-punishment, not as an excuse to stop living while you wait, not as a reason to put your own growth and joy and fullness on hold, but as a recognition that this is how you're built, and it's a form of love that the world needs more of, not less. The world has plenty of people who love conveniently, who love when it's easy, who love when the conditions are right, and disengage when they're not. The world is not short on that kind of love. What the world is short on is the kind of love that stays, that shows up when it's hard, that holds the space open when the smart thing, the practical thing, the self-protective thing would be to close it. The kind of love that says still here, still yours, still waiting. If that's you, I want you to know that I see you. I want you to know that what you're doing is not naive and it's not weakness and it's not a failure to learn from the past or to have healthy boundaries or to value yourself appropriately. It is, in fact, the fullest expression of the kind of love that actually changes things, not just for the person you love, but for you. For the person you're becoming through the practice of this love, for the world that benefits from having people in it who know how to stay. Stay. I want to talk about something else that's been sitting with me, something that I think is part of this story, connected to this experience of loving and waiting and still being here that I don't always talk about because it touches on things that feel almost too tender to put into words. But I'm going to try because I think it matters. I've been thinking about hope and how it survives, not just hope about this particular love, this particular person, this particular chapter of my life, but hope in general, the underlying capacity for hope that either exists in a person or doesn't, that either survives the losses and the disappointments and the accumulated evidence that the world does not always cooperate with your best intentions, or gets worn down slowly, incrementally, until one day you wake up and realize you've stopped expecting good things, stopped believing in the possibility of being surprised by life in beautiful ways. Stopped holding the door open. I've come close to that place. I want to be honest about that. There have been periods in my life, long ones, where hope felt like a luxury I couldn't quite afford, where the evidence on the ground was so consistently difficult that maintaining any expectation of things being otherwise started to feel not like faith, but like delusion, like the kind of optimism that's really just a refusal to look clearly at what's actually there. And I've always been committed to seeing clearly, even when what's there is hard, even when the honest view is less comfortable than the hopeful one. But I've also learned something about hope that I didn't know when I was younger. Hope is not the same as expectation. Expectation says, this specific thing will happen in this specific way on this specific timeline, and expectation, when it's repeatedly frustrated, eventually breaks. It has to. Because expectation makes promises to you about the future, and the future doesn't honor those promises reliably. The future has its own agenda. But hope, real hope, doesn't make promises. Real hope says, I don't know exactly what's coming. I can't guarantee the outcome or the timeline or the specific shape of the good thing I'm waiting for. But I believe, in some foundational way that exists beneath all the specific desires and fears and plans, I believe in goodness. I believe in the possibility of things being better than they are right now. I believe in love. I believe in the human capacity to surprise you, to show up, to rise to what's asked of them in ways you didn't see coming. I believe, without being able to prove it, that the story isn't over. That's hope. And it is incredibly hard to maintain. It requires, I've found, a kind of daily tending, like a fire in conditions that aren't ideal for fire. A fire that you have to choose actively to protect, to shield from the wind, to feed with intention. Not because the fire is certain to survive, not because you can guarantee it won't go out, but because the warmth of it, even in its fragile and uncertain state, is better than the cold. Always. Without exception, the warmth is better than the cold. So I tend the fire every day, and it's still burning, and I am still here. I want to close with something because we're getting there. We're moving toward the end of what I need to say today, and I want to land it somewhere true. Somewhere that doesn't tie everything up too neatly, because I've promised you honesty today, and honesty means acknowledging that this story is still being written. The ending isn't known. The path forward is not fully clear. The circumstances that make things complicated are still, to varying degrees, in place. And I'm not standing here telling you that everything is resolved or that I've found the answer or that the waiting is over. What I'm telling you is that I'm okay, not performed okay. Not the okay of someone who has given up caring about the outcome and decided to call their resignation peace. The okay of someone who is genuinely, presently in the reality of their life, including all the complicated and unresolved parts of it, and finding enough beauty and enough meaning and enough reasons to keep going that the word okay actually fits. I'm okay. And I'm still here. And I'm still choosing the love that got me here. The love that cracked the wall. The love that taught me that hope is heavy and waiting is brave and time is not the enemy. The love that is making me, slowly and imperfectly and sometimes painfully, a better version of the person I'm trying to be. I'm still choosing it. Are you still choosing yours, whatever it is, whatever love or hope or open door you've been holding through difficulty and uncertainty and the reasonable pressure from a world that doesn't understand why you're still holding it? Are you still there? I hope you are. I hope you'll hold it a little longer. I hope you'll trust that the tending is worth it, that the staying is worth it. That love shown up for over time and distance and all the complications of real life becomes something extraordinary, something that couldn't have been built any other way. Something forged rather than found, something that carries in it the weight of everything it survived and is more precious for that weight, not less. Hold it, be still, stay. And if you're watching this today and something in what I've said has landed somewhere real inside you, if any of it has touched the thing you've been carrying quietly, if any of it has made you feel even slightly less alone in your own waiting and hoping and still being here, then please do me a favor and hit that like button, not as a transaction, not as payment for content, but as a small signal to the universe, or at least to the algorithm, that this kind of conversation matters. That honesty matters, that the real things, the unpolished, unresolved, still in process things deserve to be seen. And if you want to keep having these conversations, if you want to be here for what comes next, because I promise you there is more. There is always more when you commit to being honest, and there is always more story when you commit to staying in it. Then please subscribe. Come back. Be part of this. Because I value your presence here more than I know how to adequately express. You are not an audience to me. You are people, real people, with your own walls and your own losses and your own complicated loves and your own fires you're tending in conditions that aren't ideal for fire. And I am here for all of it. Come back, I'll be here. Still here, still yours, still waiting. Looks into the camera one last time with something quiet and certain in his eyes, and then nods slowly once as if making a promise.